This is a Course in Miracles. It is a required course. Only the time you take it is voluntary. Free will does not mean that you can establish the curriculum. It means only that you can elect what you want to take at a given time. The course does not aim at teaching the meaning of love, for that is beyond what can be taught. It does aim, however, at removing the blocks to the awareness of love's presence, which is your natural inheritance. The opposite of love is fear, but what is all-encompassing can have no opposite. This course can therefore be summed up very simply in this way. Nothing real can be threatened. Nothing unreal exists. Herein lies the peace of God. We're reading from A Course in Miracles, Chapter 8, The Journey Back. This is Section 5, The Undivided Will of the Sonship. Can you be separated from your identification and be at peace? Dissociation is not a solution. It is a delusion. The delusional believe that truth will assail them, and they do not recognize it because they prefer the delusion. Judging truth as something they do not want, they perceive their illusions which block knowledge. Help them by offering them your unified mind on their behalf, as I am offering you mine on behalf of yours. Alone we can do nothing, but together our minds fuse into something whose power is far beyond the power of its separate parts. By not being separate, the mind of God is established in ours and as ours. This mind is invincible because it is undivided. That's the first paragraph.
Okay, what do you think?
Well, it's a very powerful statement of the unified mind of God, and it's asking us to offer that mind, that way of being, to others, so that you can, to me, it's like an invitation for others to join the mind of God. If I'm acting and being in the mind of God, which I'm not saying that that's an easy thing when the ego is always interrupting with distractions and other things, but again, my feeling is that if I want to join with Jesus's mind, if that is my desire, if that's where I'm moving my energy towards, if that's my way of putting where I want to put my mind at the beginning of the day, which, you know, when you're doing the Course in Miracles lessons, that's the whole idea, is that you begin your day and you end your day with these thoughts that help keep your mind at least working with the idea that my mind is one with God's, even though I can't feel it. I can't necessarily know it yet. It's still saying, join with me. And by joining with me, there's an infinite power that's available that helps not only myself, but the whole sonship. That's my understanding of that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, in other words, this unified mind of God, the reason it's impervious, the reason it's indestructible, is because it's the only mind there is.
Right.
It has no opponent. It has no opposition. So this is the unified mind that you and I are functioning in right now.
Right.
Even at my worst moments,
Mm-hmm.
I'm in that unified mind right now.
Right.
There's no escaping from it.
And if I don't believe that I'm in that unified mind, and I believe that I'm in my own mind and I'm making up my own decisions,
It means I'm still in the unified mind.
you are still in the unified mind, but you won't experience what the unified mind has to offer you.
No. You will absolutely experience what the unified mind has to offer you. You will only pay the price for your misinterpretation of what you're receiving. You will get the gifts of the unified mind one way or another. The gift will either be knowledge, mm-hmm. or it will be pain. Mm-hmm. You know, in other words, I make certain decisions relative to the unified mind. I have the constant problem, I have the constant issue here of God makes me happy, but I don't want it, so I turn my back on God, and so I don't get God's happiness, and that's why I'm not happy. Well, and that's relatively true. But God is God. If there is a God, God with a capital G is everywhere, at all times, in all things, completely consistent, without any ripple, without any texture, really. There's no texture in God. It's total consistency. So all of this stuff that I call on again, off again, a lack of consistency, there's no problem in the frequency. There's no problem in the receptivity. The problem is how I am labeling the gift of God. How am I labeling it? If I make a certain decision, an autonomous, I make an autonomous decision. What's my problem? What's my mistake? It's not the decision. It's that I think it's autonomous.
Right.
Now, if I make the decision with the ego, in other words, I'm going to do my little thing. Do you have your little thing? Do I have my little thing separate from God? Well, no. I have a dollhouse called the egoic little thing, my pet idea, but that's what it is. It's a dollhouse. It exists within the larger reality. I sink into my little dollhouse and arrange furniture, and I do stuff with little dolls and stuff moving around. But in the end, it's a dollhouse within reality. It's not its own reality. Right. There's no reality.
No, I know. Nothing can exist outside of God. I understand what you're saying.
So what I'm
saying that my awareness of whether or not I am, in other words, if my awareness is with, I have decided to join with the mind of God. My experience in this world will be different than if I don't decide to join with that. It just will be, for me, that's the way it works.
Okay, I know, but again,
and I'm not saying that God isn't with me wherever I go, because God is with me wherever I go, because God cannot not be with me anywhere I go, or even in my mind. But my awareness of it acting in my life, I can block it any time. I can block that awareness any moment.
This is where if I'm having a problem at the moment of understanding something or trying to express something, is I'm having a moment of realizing or seeing or noticing that words like my function, what is my function, what is my happiness,
right.
What is my will, my true will, what is God's will, what is my happiness. These are all the same word.
Yes.
I mean, obviously, they're all different words.
But in the Course, the will of God, the happiness that you experience in the will of God, the peace of God, the joy, they're all one. They're not ever separate from one another. They're all at once.
So the difficulty, the existential difficulty that I'm experiencing with this situation is that I notice in myself and in what you're saying and in just things in general, in order to communicate, I'm noticing that every word, every phrase, every subject, every predicate that I express is a pleasure of taking refuge in my own little private Idaho, my own little world. In other words, somehow when I manage to say, I have denied God, I say that phrase, I have denied the good Lord, I have denied him, and I beat my breast because I have denied my ultimate good. God doesn't see this. He doesn't know this is going on. The whole thing is my own gig.
Well,
in other words, God's will is I'm not even experiencing things differently. I'm simply labeling them differently. In other words, God's happiness is just the power of labeling. The power of labeling. I I have such an unhappy life. I have such no. You have a life. You know, you you eliminate these words one by one.
I have a life that I believe I'm walking around in a body, and I believe I'm doing.
Unhappy. The word unhappy. My life is unhappy. My life is boring. My life is a nothing. My life is a waste. These are all great gifts of freedom that God has given me. Yes, my child, your life is a waste. Do you like that? Well, no, I don't. Well, then don't use that word.
Well, there is some,
you know, but don't use it. Come up with a different word. Okay, my life was a difficult journey. Good. That's great. Do you like that? Well, difficult journey. I would rather not be difficult. Well, drop that word.
I know, but you have told me.
These are labels.
I know. You have told me that when a body believes in its pain, whether it's physical, mental, emotional, or whatever, by changing a word, you cannot convince it that it is not experiencing. I've tried that. I've tried that many, many times. You cannot.
That's right.
You can't change that.
Yeah, right. I did not hit my thumb with... Hitting my thumb with the hammer, that throbbing experience was actually pleasure.
A person who just shot off their foot accidentally with the rifle, which I know somebody who did that.
It was an expression of joy.
There's no way that is what's happening. What this is saying to me is that, okay, once you fix that leg, get that part cut off, put on your little false leg now because you don't have that part anymore. God's will for me is my perfect happiness, regardless of me now missing half of my leg or anything.
No, I know I'm dragging. I know I'm.
And it's up to me to unite my will with moving it off of my body-oriented world slightly. It just says move yourself a little bit to the other aisle. Just go over here a little bit, and I will be there for you. I will carry you through all of this. And that's when you start to experience the lightness of being, of being carried.
No, you're right. So you're talking about my experience of reality, Reality, put it this way.
Reality with a big R does never change. It just is, it is what it is.
And it's happy.
It's happy.
Reality is
the fact
happy,
that I don't experience means that I don't want to join that reality. I like my little reality better.
And the only option you have in a happy reality, what's your option? Unhappiness. That's the only choice you got. So if you're having an unhappy world,
it can be happy.
It could be happy by not having my little world. In other words, we were talking about free diving. I know I'm like all over the place. It's just that when these words come together, the function and happiness and will, and I start to recognize that
the one mind that God says you're already part of, but you won't want to recognize
that the teacher of the course is trying to get at me from these different angles. The will, the happiness, my will, your will. It's trying to make these,
your function.
Yeah.
Your function and your happiness are one.
It's trying to land a real blow on my mind, my impervious brain that says, hey, God, come at me, baby. Hit me with your best shot. It's like, God can't get me. How do I know I'm powerful? Because God can't make me happy.
Okay, well, yeah, there you go. To just reiterate, though, that once you recognize that being not separate, because Jesus is alone, we can do nothing, but together our minds fuse into something whose power is far beyond the power of its separate parts. By not being separate, the mind of God is established in ours as ours. This is the kicker here. This mind is invincible because it is undivided. So that's where we're moving from here. It's invincible. I mean, that's a huge concept. How could my mind be invincible? By being joined with God's. Well, God is... Okay, so here we go. Paragraph 2. The undivided will of the sonship is the perfect creator, being wholly in the likeness of God, whose will it is. You cannot be exempt from it if you are to understand what it is and what you are. By the belief that your will is separate from mine, you are exempting yourself from the will of God, which is yourself. Yet to heal is to make whole. Therefore, to heal is to unite with those who are like you, because perceiving this likeness is to recognize the Father. If your perfection is in him and only in him, how can you know it without recognizing him? If your perfection is in him and only in him, how can you know it without recognizing him? The recognition of God is the recognition of yourself. There is no separation of God and his creation. You will realize this when you understand that there is no separation between your will and mine. Let the love of God shine upon you by your acceptance of me. My reality is yours and his. By joining your mind with mine, you are signifying your awareness that the will of God is one. There goes that decision. Got to decide. There's always these decisions that you have to make in the course, that you have to decide that you want to join your mind with Jesus, with God. You have to make that decision that you want it.
And that's the operative word is, what do you want?
Yeah. What do you want?
And who is the one that's wanting? I don't know what I am, let's say.
Right.
If I think I know what I am, then I think I know what I want.
Right.
If I realize I don't know what I am really, then I could admit that I don't really know what I want. And so we're talking about the word want. What do you want? You're talking about I want to unite with the mind of God. What interpretation did you come to of yourself that you come to that you want to unite with the mind of God? Is it somebody who wants to escape from pain? Is it somebody who wants to do the Course in Miracles correctly? Is it someone who...
Right, because I'm still experiencing myself as a body. So my want to unite with the mind of God means that I recognize, living life now as long as I have, that my going about my wants, my desires, my things, has always been a very temporal happiness, temporal joys. It doesn't mean that I don't experience beauty, joy, love, and etc., but they're always in a passing form. Today it's this way, the next day it's this way. They're always ups and downs and everything else. Whereas God is a consistent happiness because there's nothing that it is not, and it's always happy. It's always the most abundant, loving presence anyone could even imagine. But until I look at my life and I look at all the circumstances, all the decisions I've made along the way, and I say, maybe I don't know what the heck I'm doing. Maybe I don't know what I want. And there's a whole lesson about I do not know what my own best interests are. Then I have got to just pull myself back and say, I don't know what my own best interests are. Maybe I don't know what I want. Maybe I don't know what things are. If I can say I don't know, then I can put myself as wanting what God has for me. God wants for me, God's will for me is my perfect happiness. God's will for me is to join with him so that I can have an invincible mind. The mind is invincible and undivided. It wants us to accept God's love so that we can recognize that the will that I've joined with is already the will that I have. It's already my will. I think that it's not. Right now, I think God's will is different than mine.
Somehow or another, and I'm believe it or not, I'm still on the same jag.
Okay, go ahead.
I'm still absolutely
That's
on the same jag. Just imagine a perfect circle. A perfect circle, which doesn't exist in real time and space. You can't draw it. Even if a computer draws a perfect circle, there's, whether it's the flaws in the paper or the flaws in the digits or digitalization or whatever. So, but let's just take a so-called perfect circle, which is God, that we don't know of any counterpart in reality. And when you zoom in on the edge of that perfect circle, the perfect circle representing the will of God, the will of the Father is this perfect circle. And you go in closer and closer and closer, and the closer and closer and closer you get to it, the more imperfections you see in time and space. Okay? It doesn't exist in the mind of God.
Right.
A circle is a circle. A circle is an idea.
Right.
But as soon as anything becomes physical, including a circle, in other words, put it this way, what good is a circle if it's not physical? It's pointless. A circle in...
That's kind of a funny statement.
Right. Well, a circle as an idea
right.
is useless. But a circle in time and space is informative. It's a symbol for God. It's a symbol for the earth. It's a symbol for the cycle of time. It's a symbol for so many things. What good is a circle when it remains in the mind of God? Perfect, flawless. So as soon as it becomes created, the circle, when you zoom in on it and you get really, really close, you see crenellations. You see little ups and downs on the line itself, little ups and downs.
Maybe even little separations.
Yeah, well, whatever you see what we would consider problems, difficulties with the circle, the perfect circle. Why? There's only one reason, because it's in time and space. There's nothing that you can do in time and space to make that circle perfect, except one. There's one thing you can do to make that circle perfect in time and space, and that's forgive. Forgive time and space.
Oh, yeah.
That's all you can do. I forgive time and space for being impossible to fix. I can't make a perfect circle here, no matter how blessed, perfect my life is. In other words, all those terrible things I did that separated me from God, they're crenellations on that circle. Now, it's so that my real true option, my true choice, according to the Course, is to always return and say, I have the gift of being in time and space. Why? Why? To reflect on the perfect circle. Will I ever experience it? It's not possible. You can get kind of close.
Yeah, you can have revelations.
But you're going to, as soon as you get close, as soon as you have that moment you're talking about, finally my mind is attuned with God and I'm feeling happy. Oh, you overshot. And then it turns into something else. It's, in Hinduism or in yoga again, they call it the gunas.
Yeah.
The braid of the thick quality, the thick dull quality, the bright light quality, and the energized quality. They twine together. The black rope, the white rope, and the red rope. They twine together. That's the nature of time and space. There's no escaping. So that in a sense, in the mind of God, what's this is weird, what's the perfect circle?
Now.
In time and space.
Now.
The perfect circle is an imperfect circle. So God, when he looks at our time-space experience, which is our elected experience, there's no denying that. As you said, there's no way. When God looks at it, he sees, and we have a choice. I can join with the mind of God and recognize that all the horrors that we've talked about, or that we can talk about, all the horrors, the horror from the sink that attacks me to the child that's being trafficked, whatever horror, or the foot being shot off accidentally, these are horrors in time and space. They are in various degrees inevitable aspects of the fact of the perfect circle will not be perfect in time and space. They are inevitable aspects. And so that let's not confuse me tuning my time-space experience. That's different.
Yeah.
And my friend Jonathan talked to me about this one time. He says, I think that Wayne Dyer probably has more to say to people about their spiritual life at some level, or a Stephen Covey, or a Wayne Dyer, or a Tony Robbins. These guys tune your time-space experience. They tune so that you get not, your crenellations aren't that big.
Yeah. Well.
Your deviations from what you would consider the perfect circle are not as big. God doesn't see them as imperfect.
Right.
You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Time-space is inevitably problematic.
Yeah.
Inevitably.
I do understand that. And I understand also that wherever there is a healing or what they call a miracle, that the Holy Spirit creates a suspension of time-space by my allowing that moment. It's a moment where I suspend my judgment. I tell you, sometimes it's just a moment. It literally is a moment where I say, I don't know what I need to do. I don't know what I'm at a loss. At that moment,
you flip into default. You just hit the reset, you hit the time machine, happy time machine on your computer, you hit the reset, and you touch the perfect circle.
Yeah, well, something happens. All I know is something happens. And to me, at that moment, sometimes peace comes over me. Sometimes, these various things have happened where all of a sudden I'm in a different state of being. It may not last or anything, but at that moment, I've been answered. I have been answered, and time and space suspended for that instant. And then that holy instant, I have been answered. So I think that this has to do with uniting, whether I'm aware of it or not, with the mind of God. In that moment, I'm given a glimpse into the unification that has never been divided. It never separated. And I think that in our human life where
But that's a constant, ever-present, underlying reference line, reference point to every moment that I have in this life. I have a reference point of God's absolute, with a capital H, happiness.
Yeah. Yeah.
Happiness, joy, Satchidananda, whatever. I have that's a constant reference point, because that is the referent for everything that happens here. That's the referent. So no matter how bad something seems, it's not really different or away from that perfection. It's just that it's moved off of that. So I can, in other words, I can return to the reference point, but in time and space, it's hard to say that in other words, if I set as a goal to have a second to second to second remembering of the perfect reference point, which is the happiness that God is and provides as the gift.
It's difficult to get through your regular life.
You don't have a regular life.
Yeah, you don't. No.
You don't have a regular life.
To do that.
And so what you do is, so you have a moment where you say, in the wisdom, where wisdom comes in, you say, oh, I'm going through, and it sounds like such a cliche, but I'm going through life. And that life is a gift. God, it is such a cliche. But I'm going through life. When I get, because it was such a bad moment, to get the lawyer letter asking me for money I didn't have. Oh, it's a nightmare. But you just go, you remember, it almost makes me cry. You remember that this is just a deviation in my mind, in my world, in my time space, from that perfect happiness referent point. Oh, by God, it will return.
Yeah.
It will return. Yeah. There's no way it can't return, because there's no such thing as a deviation from the ultimate happy reference point that God gives as his happiness to his sons and daughters.
Right.
There's no absolute deviation, because if it were absolute, then you would be God.
Yeah. And you would actually be able to separate from him in reality, and that's not possible.
You're always going to bounce back. So you can just say to yourself, the faster I say to myself, wow, Holy Spirit, reinterpret this for me, guide me back to that perfect circle. Maybe the miracle can reconstruct events in my life, maybe. What journey am I on? I want to be on a journey of happiness here. Anyway, that's. I think I made my point to myself anyway.
Yeah, and this is all about. This whole section is about the undivided will of the sonship, meaning that regardless of what I see of the sonship, which is all the beings, all the things in this world and everything else, no matter what I see of it, it is undivided. It's never been separated in reality.
So that you can look at anybody, and that's what's funny. There was a phrase in there about finding someone who is, what good, you join with someone who is like you. Mm-hmm. Well, that you say, oh yeah, sure, I need to find like-minded spirits and souls. I need to get an intentional community together. And what it's saying is, the only intention that's happening is yours.
Yeah, exactly.
And the community is everything.
Yeah, it's everything. It's everything.
So
everywhere.
Your intention is to join with everything.
Every moment is a new time.
Yeah. What's beautiful about God's creation is you find your intentional community. You can close your eyes and do a spin the bottle moment and just point at someone and go, there they are.
Okay. So, again, I'm just going to read the last 2 sentences of this. It says, "Let the love of God shine upon you by your acceptance of me. My reality is yours and his. By joining your mind with mine, you're signifying your awareness that the will of God is one. By joining your mind with mine, with Jesus, with the Christ, you are signifying your awareness that the will of God is one." So paragraph 3. God's oneness and ours are not separate because his oneness encompasses ours. God's oneness and ours are not separate because his oneness encompasses ours. To join with me is to restore his power to you because we are sharing it. I offer you only the recognition of his power in you, but in that lies all truth. As we unite in him. Glory be to the union of God and his holy sons. All glory lies in them because they are united. The miracles we do bear witness to the will of the Father for his Son and to our joy in uniting with his will for us.
You can so I know I'm jumping the gun, but so you can ride on Jesus Christ's storyline. Mm-hmm. That teacher with a capital T, the presenter of the course, offers to say, okay, if you want narrative, because that's what the time space is narrative, ride on mine. Ride on my narrative. Because my narrative was united with the Father. Yes. It's beautiful.
It is beautiful. It is beautiful. Okay, I'm going to go on from there. It had glory be to the union of God and his holy sons. It has this huge exclamation point there. It's like, there's a celebration of the fact that we have never lost that union. And if you join in, like you said, the narrative of Jesus's life and of how we perceive him as, a partner that we can join arms with on this journey in life, then he's saying your yoke is the yoke is easy and the burden's light. That's the purpose of your happiness. That's the and once you know that you're united, it becomes a lightness of being. That's to me.
The life of Christ becomes a vehicle.
Yeah.
Because they say one explanation for the Course in Miracles is that it's a correction to the biblical narrative.
Yeah, I agree.
I'm not going to get into whether it needs correcting or not, because a lot of people don't feel that way about the Bible. But I would say for me, it does, like in an instance like this, the author of this book, which is a pretty impressive author as far as I'm concerned, the author of this book, the narrator, is saying, I'm like you guys. I've got a narrative. And he doesn't tell me what that narrative is. Jesus doesn't say, I did the way of the cross. Jesus doesn't say, and here he doesn't say, I split loaves and fish or whatever.
No, but he goes over the healing of the idea of the crucifixion and things like that. I mean, I think we've even read that. I'm not sure. But anyway, our idea of it is different than the perceived pain and suffering that you must basically suffer to have your salvation.
But in the narratives, any narrative that I have, whether, let's say I'm thinking about Tom Cruise's life as a narrative, I can be stuck in his movie and just see him in Mission Impossible or whatever, but I can walk a mile in his moccasins and say, what the hell, what did Tom Cruise have to go through to do those special effects at the age of 60 in that last Mission Impossible. I can look at his ripped abs or whatever, and I can kind of say, wow, where's this guy getting this stuff from? In other words, I can get beyond the movie. I'm just using it as an example of Jesus, his story. We're given a narrative that's cartoonish, as you said.
Yeah.
It's whether it's the crucifixion, the way of the cross, Jesus fell for the third time, all these things. Or the sacramental life in the Catholic Church or whatever it is. There's all of these aspects of the narrative, the Christian narratives. But if I enter into them in relationship to them, not accepting them as simple, like Jesus is my car, I'm going to ride on him and get to heaven.
Oh, yeah.
Not that kind of relationship.
Okay.
It's Jesus is a living, breathing reality. Relate to it.
Yeah.
It's different than just relating to a car.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, it's not just this thing will carry me. No, this is, we're joining in a space that unites us in actually a love that is beyond, like I said, beyond comprehension. It unites us in a space that helps to heal the world. That's the whole idea, is that my wanting to unite with what Jesus is saying here, to unite with the will of the Father and the will of his Son, which is one, then there's all power in it. It's in the mind becomes, that's invincible. And there's nothing in my life that I can relate to. It's a different world. These are two different worlds, and Jesus even mentions that the world that we exist in a perceptual reality, is not the same world once your eyes are opened that you see and experience by wanting and desiring on a regular basis to be in remembrance that my will of the Father is the same as my will. It's the same. I think I have a separate will, but I don't. Okay, let's go on. When you, paragraph 4, when you unite with me, you are uniting without the ego, because I have renounced the ego in myself and therefore cannot unite with yours. Our union is therefore the way to renounce the ego in you. The truth in both of us is beyond the ego. Our success in transcending the ego is guaranteed by God, and I share this confidence for both of us and all of us. I bring God's peace back to all his children because I received it of him for us all. Nothing can prevail against our united wills because nothing can prevail against God's.
Yeah, keep going.
Yeah, that's just really, really powerful. The only thing I would say about that is that in the movement towards saying I want to recognize that my will with God and Jesus are one, that the ego will often come biting back in different ways in my life. If I start to move my way over there, it will fight for its authorship back in my life. It's happened over and over and over again. And the best you can do is just try to calm it down a little bit. I try to say, shh, be quiet. It's going to be okay.
Or the other option is let it wear itself out.
Yeah, exactly.
Unfortunately, then you got a prayer.
Yeah.
Let my rebellion against peace and the true nature of who I am, as interpreted, I don't even have to say interpreted by God, the true nature of who I am, the true nature. Let me wear that out sooner than later. And by the grace of God and the presence of the Holy Spirit, let me wear it out at least before I die.
Yeah, at least before I die. I agree. Okay, paragraph 5. Would you know the will of God for you? Would you know the will of God for you? Ask it of me, who knows it for you and will find it. I will deny you nothing, as God denies me nothing. Ours is simply the journey back to God, who is our home. Whenever fear intrudes anywhere along the road to peace, it is because the ego has attempted to join the journey with us and cannot do so. Sensing defeat and angered by it, the ego regards itself as rejected and becomes retaliative. Isn't that funny? I got to that before I read it. Okay. You are invulnerable to its retaliation because I am with you. On this journey, you have chosen me as your companion instead of the ego. Do not attempt to hold on to both, or you will try to go in different directions and will lose the way.
So there's a neat trick when you turn Jesus into an ego.
Oh, that's problematic.
I'd say it happens a lot.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, but Jesus told me to go this way, and Jesus told me to go and do that, and Jesus told me, it's easy to do that. It's easy to make up stuff so that Jesus is the one who said.
I was in design class. I know you know this story, but I'm going to tell it. I was in design in architecture school. I was in design class. There was a born-again Christian in there, a guy that was fundamentalist, and he had recently, whatever, quote-unquote, found the Lord. And so he does this design, and Alan Olson, the teacher from Chicago, was critiquing his work and saying, well, you ought to change this or this. You got a problem with this entrance or this exit or this circulation or these formal problems. And the guy said, God told me to do it this way. And so Alan Olson, when he's giving his grades, he says, well, God gets a C.
There you go. I know. So there is the problem of that part of the journey where we make things up and say that God is moving me to do this. Well, God told me to, that I needed to get that, whatever it is, get a new car, get a new hairdo, whatever it is. It's part of what needs to happen now. God is prompting me to go this way, and I'm always like, wait a minute. I don't think it's exactly the way God works. Anyway, so yes, the ego will sense defeat and be angered by it, and it will want to go on this journey where I've decided to join my will with Jesus, and you just gotta kick him out of the car. Throw him on the sidewalk. Anyway, okay. So this is Jesus speaking again. The ego's way is not mine, but it is also not yours. The Holy Spirit has one direction for all minds, and the one he taught me is yours. Let us not lose sight of his direction through illusions, for only illusions of another... Let us not lose sight of his direction through illusions, of his, meaning God's, direction through illusions, for only illusions of another direction can obscure the one for which God's voice speaks in all of us. Never accord the ego the power to interfere with the journey. It has none, because the journey is the way to what is true. Leave all illusions behind and reach beyond all attempts of the ego to hold you back. I go before you because I am beyond the ego. Reach therefore for my hand because you want to transcend the ego. My strength will never be wanting, and if you choose to share it, you will do so. I like that. Reach therefore for my hand because you want to transcend the ego. My strength will never be wanting, and if you choose to share it, you will do so. I give it willingly and gladly because I need you as much as you need me. So that's beautiful.
No, it is. So that in any instant, because a day is full of instants.
Yes,
it's full of instants. And what do you think, percentage-wise? How many instants in a day do you think you are even aware that you're in? What percentage?
I don't know.
I bet it's less than 2%.
Yeah, it's pretty low.
And then out of those instants,
I mean,
how many times are you tapping into some other kind of a place? Some truth with a capital T. How often? Let's say out of my life. Let's say out of a waking day, I'm just going to be generous and say 5%. Yeah. No, I can't do that. 3% of my day, I have an awareness that I'm even alive. The rest of the time, I'm just doing stuff.
Yeah, right.
I'm thinking stuff, doing stuff, going about my business, but I'm not really aware a lot. Mm-hmm. So let's say I'll give it 5%. out of that 5% of the day, and then how many times out of that do I have an awareness of a transcendent or a truthful or an honest or a joyful reality? Oh my God, it's out of that, it's not even 5%. Out of that 5%, it's
okay. Granted,
it's a fraction of a
and
percent.
yet, okay, we're in the lessons of the 50s right now. Wouldn't you say that those instances are happening more frequently?
Yeah, they do happen more frequently. I mean,
Yeah.
I'd say that I have, in any given day, I'm going to say I might have 4, 5
little moments
where I feel like that there's something beckoning that's a little bit on the other side of this.
Yeah. So
and I will say also that when I do feel that there's it's definitely not knee-jerk response at this point, but as soon as I have a tough moment, like this morning, let's say I spill coffee on the floor.
Mm-hmm.
I scattered. It's some dumb thing. It's like it's a ridiculous thing where I just drop a load of coffee on the floor. And I go, and half of it's on my foot and all that kind of stuff. And I go, that's my usual cue, to launch.
Yeah.
Into literally to launch.
Into expletives.
I load all my missiles. So you think of those aircraft carriers or whatever, and they just,
Yeah.
Anyway, I start launching at that moment, and I go, wait, this isn't a moment for the launch. Yeah. It's a moment to just see, spilled coffee on foot. I'd rather not, but it gives me an opportunity to not launch.
Yeah, I agree.
In other words, to not launch my missiles that are primed and ready. I'm waiting. I'm waiting for an attack so I can press the button. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah. No, I know. The expletives just start flying.
I want to press the button. I'm like, what was that guy in the Kennedy era? Lee, with that general?
Oh, I don't know.
I can't remember. But anyway, there's this general who was just like, give us a reason to go after the Ruskies. Give us a reason.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah, he was just waiting. He wanted... Yeah. Yeah, I agree.
And that's me. That's me all day long. And when I spill coffee on the floor or something, it's like, time to get out the mother of all bombs.
Yeah.
But it gives me an opportunity to not.
Yeah.
And at some point, I think that maybe you get enough of those, and you go, I got a permanent peacenik in the White House. Mm-hmm. So eventually you dismantle your nuclear arsenal. Yeah. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I do understand.
I mean, does that metaphor go too far afield? Or?
No, I don't think it does, because reading this and discussing it with you, and also then doing the lessons in the back, all give me the opportunity to experience those moments. And because I begin to experience those moments, because you're repeating a mantra, or you're repeating something, or you're doing something on a regular basis, you're inviting in the Holy Spirit. You're inviting in Jesus by just the process of doing those lessons. It becomes an invitation. And I tell you what, when you keep doing it, like us doing the rosary all the time, we've been doing the rosary now for a long time, there becomes like what I consider an engine to it. And now it starts to have a life. It has a life that was dead. It was like some kind of dangling thing hanging out there, just barely living in life. Okay, that's what we do in this life. We barely live, and yet we go through all of our stuff and everything else. And something starts to give it real life, real sense of being. And to me, the Course is that way. It returns us to our natural state. If we want it, again, I can't tell you how many times it says you have to make a decision for it. You have to desire it. You have to want it above all else, in fact. But until you can want it above all else, wanting it once in a while will help you to want it above all else. So you keep practicing it and keep practicing it until it starts to move in your life into a place where you start to actually recognize it in the world around you. things begin to me, and I don't know how this is with other people who have practiced this, becomes more synchronistic. You look like you're going to be late for something, but something happens and you show up exactly on time. You look like it's sometimes these various things are not going to happen the way you want them, but somehow that one gets canceled. Something else happens where you end up in this other place. Things become synchronistic, as if the hand of God is actually reaching into my illusory world, and things are working better. They actually start to work better.
Well, okay, so you've got the the whole thing, the course, called the Course in Miracles, and the miracle is always a healing of perception, a healing of the separation through a healing of my misjudged perception. I have a perception, and that perception is an untrue thing. Mm-hmm. And so these miracles look like, in my life, if I interpret them as magic, in other words, little flashes of beauty that happen like magic spells that happen, I'm kind of missing the point.
Yeah, you are.
They are voids. They are voids in what they call in the one mantra, Janglikaya Mane, the jungle of the mind, the jungle of thought.
Yeah, it's a little opening.
It's an opening in the jungle. Mm-hmm. And you see the light on the other side of the jungle. That's what the miracle is. It's not truly a positive thing like a magical intervention in our life to make it. It's actually spaciousness. It's a tiny bit of space.
I agree with that. That's, as a description, I think that little opening is where those moments happen, and you can feel it. It actually is palpable when they happen. And I would say that anyone who begins to experience that by doing the course, that it's a time for gratitude. Say, well, what do you know? God's working in my life, just like that.
You back off, and I'm not sure what the difference is if I view them as positive gestures or interventions, like a miracle as a thing in itself instead of a space that allows the light to come through. I don't know what that does in terms of trying to reinforce, hey, what did I do to get that? What did I do? Now, and the irony of that
is a problem in doing any form of spiritual work.
Well, the thing is, just think about it. What did I do to get that? Well, it's the wrong question.
Yeah, it's right.
What did I not do?
Exactly. What did I not do?
What did I not do to get that?
That is the correct question. I agree.
Because the doing is the Jangalikaya Mane. The doing is the jungle. We build the jungle with our doings.
Yeah, and with our mind. You know, sometimes it's not something that is happening in my world, but it's happening in my mind, that I'm stuck with something, a conversation that didn't go the way I wanted it to, and I repeat it over and over and over. There's a rumination. And then I say, I don't want to carry this with me. Gosh, it's just, I'm upset, I'm this, that, or the other thing. And a prayer, a moment, and if I'm sincere in my heart that I either want to forgive the fact that I can't let go of this, or forgive the other person, or whatever it is, it will provide that little opening, like you said, that opening in the jungle where the light shines through and peace will dawn upon the mind if it's sincere. I've had it happen, and so I'm going to say it works.
Well, that scene in the Matrix, okay, that comes up. You know, that one scene, beautiful scene in the Matrix where Trinity and Neo are in the craft, and to
Nebuchadnezzar,
and to escape from all the sentinels or whatever they are, they shoot through the atmosphere. Mm-hmm. Neo's blind; he can't see anything. Yeah. And Trinity says, "Oh, it's so beautiful. It's the first time in her entire life she's ever seen light." They go from a nightmare chase scene. They pierce the blue, and she has literally about a second and a half of brilliance and blue sky, of the way this world was created, about the way this world was intended, about the beauty of all things. But by God, they're on a mission, and the thing dives back down in, and she's impaled. Yeah. That's when she gets impaled. Yeah. So, not to throw a downer on it, but I mean, there is that aspect of these light spots are reference points.
Absolutely.
And there's no reason to really try to get addicted to them.
I know, but people do. I mean, and you and I both know on the spiritual path, many people start to say, well, I did this or I did that and stuff. And it's very much an I-ego sense. And while things are going well, it's as if, God has shined beautifully on their lives and this is why it's happening. And so they try to keep it going and keep it going. It becomes a magic show.
As soon as you try, it's all over.
Yeah, it is. It is. And it ends up being a place of misery for the people around you and for the people who are experiencing that from you and from that own person's own life as it starts to fall apart because it cannot keep going that way under those kind of ways of doing it.
We will have happiness.
Anyway.
Okay, we're done.
We're done. Thank you.
Thank you.